I want to eat egg rolls so bad.
It's buffalo chicken egg rolls.
All right, so tape is running. Why do I have the schedule up? Because I want to change the schedule. What's that?
Because you're going to change our test for
No. But it occurred to me that when it's all said and done, test 4 will cover chapter 19 and 20.
Okay.
Yes.
And 18.
Like half of 18. That's a stupid. Whatever was in 18 I didn't test you on, forget it. I'm not going to bother. You'll see it again on the final. So can you imagine 50 questions out of chapter 19 and 50 questions out of 20? How much detail do you think you're going to have to memorize to get that deep? So I'm saying screw it. What I want to do is I want to bump test 4 back a ways. Like maybe even have test 4 just cover whatever else we cover and then have a cumulative final. But I want to know what this looks like for you guys. We only have 2 more weeks of class after today.
Alright, so we move to the 24th. We have research presentations the day before and our health policy paper due the same day.
Right.
Okay, on the 24th.
On the 24th.
Yes.
Okay.
The last day of class is December 1st,
Take home test.
and you
Our last
don't have anything on that,
So
right?
we have the ATI Pediatrics December 2nd.
That's
You
on the
have that on the
second.
second.
But
No,
we
that's the
actually have
first.
class on the first. Okay.
Oh,
That is the first?
That's got to be the first. I'm not going to bring you guys in on a Wednesday. That's just a mistake.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Gosh, how much power do you think I have? I can just make you randomly come whenever I want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didactics is Tuesday.
Okay.
Wait, talk about
They're like, well, I
what
guess
has been
so.
this semester.
So, wait, we're not coming, wait, hold on, never mind.
So what I want to do is I want to push the test back instead of, it's kind of stupid to test on only 2 chapters. But I want to do it at a time, there's no such thing as a convenient test. But I don't want to kill anybody either. But if we go next week for the test, we're not going to cover anything on the test. So we really have to do it the week after if I hope to cover anything at all. Right? And so, and I'm shocked, I'm done, I've got like no time left.
No,
Yep.
we're done.
So your
I got
options are the 24th or the 1st.
First. Done some.
Yeah.
You may have the next semester pick out just the super vitally important parts.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking like next semester, not teaching you any of the normal stuff and only teaching the abnormal. So you guys would know normal pregnancy and I would teach high-risk pregnancy. You guys would know labor and I would teach high-risk labor, that kind of stuff. But I don't know how well that would work, you know.
So if we move it to the 1st, just hypothetically, we have exam 4 for research the day before. And I'm using quotes because we haven't even done exam 3 yet, which we were supposed to be yesterday. So,
Has she posted it?
no.
No.
Okay.
Say that again.
So what's wrong with doing it on the
We have
24th?
Tentatively, it says exam 4
Well,
on
you've
the
got a
30th
paper
for
due the
research.
day of and the day and a presentation the day
Before.
before.
So what?
Wait, the first, with the first, that's when we're taking both of our ATIs.
Well, the which ATIs?
We have leadership
Leadership.
and
Oh,
leadership
needs
too.
and leadership, yeah.
On the second.
So the first you might be a little over-tested, you're saying?
Right,
Maybe
let's
a
just
little.
do it on the 24th.
Yeah, the 24th would be fine.
That'll be fine.
We can't do it on the
I
same
just
day.
put ATI actually.
Yeah, can we just not do ATI?
Kinda have to.
Maybe
we can do ATI before.
What?
Make ATI.
If, you know,
It's
I'm,
actually not bad. I've been doing the practice test. It's not horrible.
Can we do it?
But we might want to turn the recording off if we're gonna negotiate.
You're gonna want to backtrack.
Turn it off and then like, okay, that's what we decided.
you know, you couldn't have waited till I paused to say that?
Hint. Look, you just.
You know, yeah, so I could care less about the ATI, okay? I think it is the stupidest thing. And that's why when I realized that I forgot to schedule the maternal child ATI, I was like, oops. And I just completely ignored it, right? But I have to give an ATI. I can't pretend I forgot both of them, right? Yes?
Can we do ATI like next week or the other week?
So
We haven't even started pediatrics yet, and that's the difficulty.
Do the test on the
Let's do maternal ATI.
You know, that might not be a bad, I just thought that same thing, that I haven't covered enough in peds ATI to do a peds ATI test. But maybe we'll offer the maternal ATI instead,
I would rather.
instead of the
That's
peds
the
ATI. And then we could do the maternal ATI like next week, and get that out of the way. All right, back to recording. So those who are at home, the 10 of you that are at home.
And what have we established?
What?
He's
So,
with us. We're just talking out loud right now.
Okay.
so what I might do is schedule the maternal ATI
Okay.
on the 17th, because I think we've hit maternal child pretty well, right? And then have the exam 4 here on the December 1st, and then the final on December 8th. How does that sound?
Okay.
Sounds good.
What
And
time is our
no
final?
pediatrics.
Right.
ATI.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have a time for the final.
Final is the same as class time or what?
Usually you have the good.
Yeah, no, I don't know. There's a, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a schedule, thank you. There's a university schedule that says when you have to take your final.
Yeah, but
Whatever
our,
day or time that is, I don't
our
have
final
it.
is, you have it on the
Change it
8th.
last semester?
What's that?
Didn't you change it last semester?
I don't remember changing it,
The
no?
problem with the university schedule is that they don't play with us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
they don't.
what time do you want us to do our final?
I'm thinking same day and time as we would normally take class.
1 o'clock it is.
Final
So
at
1 o'clock on the 8th.
Yes.
The 8th. That's fine.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We are going to,
I have a
Yeah,
conflict
but
with
there's.
at 1 o'clock.
Oh.
okay,
Because,
on the 8th or what?
yeah, because regular university, non-traditional class time finals are at 2 that day, and I have a non-traditional class final at 2. An hour after we start.
We can move it earlier that day if it's convenient for you.
If there's no other finals, we can do it anytime you want.
I have the same one.
At 2? Yeah, so earlier.
And we're one, so I.
Like 9, no?
No, 11.
We're gonna do it like 9 o'clock. Can we do it 9 on the 8th?
You said that real fast.
No.
At 9 on the 8th? Yeah, we can do it at 9 on the 8th.
9.
9 on the.
Wait, no, I'm in class until 9, that's a Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm in class
but
until
it's final.
9:30.
It's final.
Oh, it's finals week, yeah, what the hell?
Trying to find 9 o'clock.
0,
Yeah.
9,
A.M.
And it's cumulative now, so I can erase these chapters that you originally designated it for, right?
Yeah.
It is cumulative?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are we gonna have a review for that?
It's right here.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for first now.
He's like, yeah, I know, you guys get 12.
Hey, I have a question concerning the final.
No test?
Huh,
You're gonna give us a little bit of a study guide, right? Because, like a little topic review. I can't, I'm not, there's so much going on up here, you can't hear.
November 17th.
Would you please?
for the final, yeah, of
I'm
course,
just asking.
yeah.
Okay,
And then
that's
the
what I was-
24th, he doesn't have anything for the class
Okay,
separate.
never mind, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Okay, drug calculation test.
so the 24th is now nothing except for class
Are
level.
we doing a drug calculation test?
Yeah, so what, yeah, we have to do the drug test, probably do it next week.
Oh, yeah. Next
Okay, so
Tuesday?
it's next week. Just have to went out.
What I'd like to do is do it at 12:30. Can we do it at 12:30 next week?
Okay.
Because only 10 have to be there, I don't wanna,
Okay.
No,
Okay, so maternal ATI next week, followed by lecture.
yeah.
Okay.
Maternal ATI, November 17th,
Okay,
Yes,
okay?
and drug calculation.
And drug calculation
For
test
those who
before that,
okay,
12:30,
okay.
okay? And then I'm gonna have to rearrange, the next thing in our lecture would be care of the growing child and then cognitive gastrointestinal disorders. I'm gonna have to rearrange how I work those, but I'm gonna put test 4 here.
Okay. That gives us Thanksgiving break, so that's great. Next week. At 1 o'clock, yeah.
You have to
On
write.
the 17th.
We have the drug calculation and the ATI.
Say again?
On the 17th of November, we have the ATI and drug calculation.
Okay, which one is at 1 o'clock?
The ATI will be over.
Okay.
Just grab there.
And then the drug housing at 12:30, right?
The second, no, the first is the exam for. First. The final is the 8th at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, did she give us her take home?
No, it's not posted. She's supposed to be in this afternoon. Has anyone seen her?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Just say.
But we're still on that same path with her though, right?
Yeah, we're still at the take home, but the take home has not been executed.
Okay.
And it is still due like what, the 6th,
She
18th?
moved the dates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she said it wasn't fair for us to get the exam later and have it due on the same time. So when she gave it to us, she'll establish a due date.
So take home is this. Hey, can you go down this after you're done doing that?
I love that phase. Can we capture that?
I don't think we'll need too much time.
And go to the slide, because the last picture.
Okay, so
Cross them.
do you guys do reunions in your,
Do we do what?
24th, there he is.
Yeah, we
It's
do.
the question about leadership
you know,
in
second
June,
grade?
because the states.
when you guys do?
Right?
The
First
states
meeting?
and whatever that AI,
Tuesday. We do it at
whatever
baptism.
she also wrote.
Oh, I wrote down the back of my hair.
We have to look at it.
Baptism is when?
First, well, sometime after 40 days.
AIDE.
It's on our paper badge list.
Oh, okay.
So your reunion is that same time?
Rachel, you said it right.
What?
That picture that was gonna be on our paper badge.
Oh, the
Yes.
It's on that badge?
On the badge, here. Let me make
Okay,
sure.
so here's what I'm gonna do. So what I know for certain is we're not gonna have test 4 next week. But on the 17th, we're gonna have drug calculations at 12:30, ATI at 1 o'clock, maternal child ATI. We'll cover as much peds as we can cover, and whatever we cover will be from chapter 19 and as much peds as we can. We'll be tested exam 4 on the 17th, and then we'll have finals, we'll have a final which is cumulative on the week of the 8th, and we don't know exactly when that will be, right?
9 a.m.
9 a.m.?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
As long as you don't have a final on that day.
yeah. Oh, my final is gonna take 5 seconds for my FYS.
Do they
Must
know
be
it?
nice.
Are you giving a final for your plan?
It's going to be very simple.
Can you make fun of
What, for you guys?
Yeah.
So what you guys need to know is it's cumulative. We'll talk about that when we get there. The FYS guys are I'm just gonna play one of those games where you have all these complicated questions, and the last one says, write your name at the top of the page and turn it in.
Oh, that's.
Oh, it's like number 1, read all the
Yeah,
stuff.
read
before you-
everything
Yeah.
first.
Games.
And then do that just for games, just to goof on.
Just for shit.
I told one of the students today, because she turned in her paper, which is due like next week. She turned it in for me to read, and I read it and made some comments. She's like, oh, because I really want to do a good job and I want to get an A. And I was like, listen, everybody who gives me a paper is going to get an A. So don't worry about it. Just turn it in. Get over it. And they're like, but I want to do a good one. Listen, moron, just turn it in. Don't bother me. This is FYS. No.
I'm teaching you to turn in the paper.
That's exactly it. FYS is college survival skills. You're not learning, anything academic. You're learning how to be a student. And so practice writing, practice turning things in, practice meeting deadlines, practice reading rubrics and reading syllabuses. That's what I want to teach you, So just pay attention to what the professor gives you. That's all you need. And so I'm like, oh, you're killing me with this. Because they all want to do something. They all were overachievers in high school, and they all want to be overachievers here. And I'm like, you're missing the point of the course.
Yeah, overachieving is like first semester.
Overachieving is a wonderful thing, but you got to, pay attention to the objectives of the course. The objectives of the course are not to become an ethics expert. That's just what we're using to teach you how to be a student, is ethics. All right, so let's move on. So, temperament. Temperament are the characteristics that the child has at birth and how the child responds to it. What's really interesting about temperament is I've come to understand that infants develop their temperament in utero. They don't develop their temperament after they're born. I talk a lot about how the baby in the womb is the exact same as the baby outside the womb, and we've talked about this a lot. I meant to put a picture in here. I'm gonna have to go find it for you. But people will say it all the time. My baby he kicked like crazy all the time in the womb, and then he's a kid that runs around all the time. Or my baby was always real calm and quiet. He never really moved a lot in the womb, and on the outside he's the same way as an easygoing kid, right? My first son is spastic. He's frenetic. He goes crazy. Okay, he's all over the place all the time. And he was that way in the womb as well. But number two, I swear number two, the only reason I know that he's even alive is he shows up to eat once in a while. I mean, he's like a sloth, the kid, he just never moves, okay? And they've always been that way. And so, people act surprised when they find out that their baby acts exactly the way on the outside that they act on the inside. I'm like, why are you surprised? They're the same human being. But, we like to recognize these things as starting at birth. But it was the same brain doing the same things when he was breathing amniotic fluid and getting his oxygen from the umbilical cord as it was after he was born. They don't magically put a brain in him when he's born. You don't magically, it's not like what we thought went back in the days of the ancient Greeks that you got a soul when you were born. All of a sudden you're nothing, this mass of nothing, and you're born, and there's your soul. It's not like that, right? It's always there from very early days. And I wanted to show you guys this picture that one of my friends posted recently that I thought was really very, very telling. Let me go back. Where was it?
Well, I think it's because another thing, like, you think of the biology with where the development in the fetus, like, you don't think of the personality or the nurture being developed too.
Did I put it here? Oh, I don't have it. Oh, well. Too bad. One of my friends was talking about how wonderful it is to be a midwife. And she posted this picture of a baby who was like 10 or 11 years old, who's, pretty shy around grown-ups. She's got that stranger anxiety of an early toddler. And as soon as like she came in the room, she put her arms out, and the kid jumped into her arms and climbed up into her arms and was just putting his head on his shoulder and resting in her arms. And she was like, oh, being a midwife is so wonderful. I get to hold babies all the time. And she was telling the story about how this baby's nervous around other grown-ups, but not nervous around her. And I was saying, I recognize the same thing. When I take care of a woman during pregnancy, and then, she'll go away and come back a year later pregnant again, the toddlers know who I am. They'll climb right up into my lap and sit on my lap like they've known me all their lives, because of course they have. Because they heard me while they were in the womb. And I talked to them and I played with them and I called them by name. From as early as before they could even hear, they heard my voice. My voice was there. And so I'd see them over and over and over again, and these kids recognized me. And, I'll see kids and they're like 5 or 6 years old, and I caught them, and they know who I am even though they haven't seen me. Once they start hearing my voice, and I'll start messing with them, and they'll just jump right up into my arms. Because they, on some kind of a subconscious level, I believe they recognize who I am. Even though they wouldn't be able to put a finger on who I am. Yes. They recognize it, Because the events of early infancy stick with you for an awful long time. Each of my kids has their own lullaby. And so I sing the lullaby only to that child. And so with my oldest son, John, every night I'd put him to bed, and I would sing Billy Joel's, what it was, it wasn't Good Night, My Angel, it was, In Every Heart by Billy Joel. And it's a wonderful little lullaby type song. And when he was about 18 months old, we were driving up to Connecticut, and that song came on the radio, and he instantly started crying because it wasn't nap time yet. Even though he hadn't heard it in a long time, as soon as he heard the song, he got upset. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it was because he recognized his lullaby. And he's like, oh man, not nap time yet. I just woke up. It was so funny. So temperament is something that's developed very early in life. The researchers who came up with temperament came up with several different types of factors in temperament. And I want you to pay attention to it and see if you can think about the children you know and where they might fit, okay? So one of them is regularity. A child who's expressing regularity, children need stability, they need regularity in their life, and oftentimes they don't handle change very well. But a child who's easy, as it goes to regularity, is very flexible. The changes are okay. They don't matter. They're okay. They're a child who who doesn't require regularity very much, okay? And then there's reaction to new people. An easy child would be outgoing and vivacious and, you know, jumps into other people's arms, where most children would tend to, like, would react kind of shyly to other people, okay? So adaptability to change, very similar to regularity, it's just kind of the opposite, but an easy child with adaptability to change would be a very adaptable child, okay? Sensory and sensitivity, or sensory sensitivity. Those are the kids, an easy child who has sensory sensitivity would be the kind that are, you know, they deal with chaos, they deal with mess, they don't need to be very meticulous, they don't need to be very clean. My daughter, when she was 4 years old, we were doing organization day, and they had these games for the toddlers, you know, and one of them was hands and foot crawl, like they had to get on all fours and walk. Well, it had rained the night before, so the grass was a little wet, and my daughter went, okay,
Right?
and just walked away. She was not going to put her hands on that wet, dirty ground. She was not going to do it. She would be rather meticulous, right? So she would not deal well with a lot of sensory intake. Emotional intensity. Baby number 4. I think baby number 4. The kid was always like hyper about like, oh no, well currently, my gosh, I guess it's the age. Baby number 5 is driving me nuts with this, where everything is an argument, everything is a fight. You know, yesterday I told him he had to put on a belt before he went to school. And, you know, it's part of the school uniform. You got to have a belt. You're going to get a ticket. If you don't, you need a belt. I can't find my belt. My belt's lost. Somebody took my belt. Ah! All this nonsense and chaos, right? He's very intense emotionally. He's not what you would call an easy child, who would give me little or no reaction. Where his brother would be like, well, okay. I'll find the belt. Half an hour later, you find the belt? No, I'm still looking for the belt.
Do they know how that you talk about them?
I'm sure they do, because I talk about it like this to their face. Another temperament trait is the level of persistence. How hard they stick on one task before giving up. You know, you got the kids who will pore over a problem for hours and hours and hours, and then you got the kid who's like, I just can't get it, never mind, and they move on. Okay, there's just no persistence to them at all. What's that?
Or they just write down the answer and act like they did it?
Yeah, well, as long as they get the answer, I don't care.
No, an answer, not
Oh,
the
an answer. No, that's a little different. Another temperament trait is distractibility, or activity level. And a lot of these are very similar, but you know what activity level is, right? Yeah. Baby number 7, who can't walk anywhere, okay? It's zoom, 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 zoom. He's like Dash from The Incredibles, that kid. And he's just stick thin, because he can't sit still. And he's just all over the place, and his current thing is dinosaurs. So he runs around the house like this. It's so cute. And he's running around there, and he's attacking everything, right? Because his level of activity is just through the roof.
How old is he?
He's 7, 8, 7. I think he's 8, but he just turned 8. Like, I think his birthday was in August. Well, you know, you lose track. I'm pretty sure his birthday was in August. But anyway. And he was born in Watertown?
Just stop.
Anyway, but his activity level is through the roof, you know. Distractibility, the degree to which the child can be distracted. This is not the same thing as ADD, okay? Understanding that every child has a degree of distractibility that is there. It's part of their personality, it's part of their temperament. ADD is where that's taken to the pathologic level, where it interferes with their function outside normal behavior. And of course, the big debate in pediatrics is where is that line drawn? Yeah. And you know, the fact that you draw it very early for boys, or you use the same line for boys and girls, is a little bit unfair, I think. That, you know, None of my children will ever be on one of those crazy ADD meds because I don't care. Like Timmy, he's running like crazy. He'll wear it out. It'll be okay. Or he'll turn into a sprinter. Whatever. I'll put him on the track. Go! You know, either way, I'll take advantage of it, right? So I don't mind. But the degree of distractibility is another personality trait or another temperament trait. And then the mood. You know, an easy child in the mood trait would be, you know, the kind who sees the world very positively. You know, the optimist versus the pessimist. You guys, I hate pessimists. They drive me crazy. I'm like, really? Does being a pessimist make your life any better? And my wife says, well, of course it does. Like, well, okay. If it makes you happy, honey, go be a pessimist. I'm going to be an optimist over here. And, you know, but the problem is she's right so often. And it drives me crazy that she has to be right. So
Moms typically are right, though.
they tend to be
That's
right. But
annoying.
yeah, it's a little
I
rough.
was just talking to my friend Emily about this the other day. It's like, when you have kids, do you automatically just know everything in the world? Is, you know, like, how does that happen?
The answer is yes.
Well, you care.
Parents know everything.
It's just annoying.
Well,
My mom is always right. I'm just like, for once, can you be wrong? Like,
Well,
can I be right?
and of course her response would be, for once could you just listen to me? If you
That's
know
what
I'm
she
always
says.
right, just answer it. Just the answer is yes. You know, did mom say to do it? Yes, then it's right. You know, exactly. You know what they say, like, if at first you don't succeed, do it the way your wife told you to do it in the first place?
Yeah.
Yes. You know, yeah, it's there's something about that. But you know, that's a wisdom and experience thing that comes into that. You know, your mom has an awful lot more life experiences than you do. So she's always right because she's already made those mistakes. And from her perspective, she's looking at you as the way I look at my teenagers. I wish you would stop being such a moron and just accept it. You know, that stop making those mistakes and do it the way I told you to in the first place. But you know, you can't. You just can't do it. You got to be you, right? You have to go through those stages. And you know, I remind my kids, I did the exact same stupid thing that you're about to do. And when you get it wrong and you hurt yourself, remember I said it was going to happen. And maybe next time you won't do it. Okay, go jump out of the tree. There you go. Now let's go to the emergency room. I tried to warn you, you know.
I see you doing it just like
I
that.
do.
too.
I do. All the time. I'm like, well, you know, I tried to warn you, but I understand you have to do it. Chicks dig scars, right?
Yeah,
That-
that's
They
right.
really do. They,
Yeah.
like a conversation starts, like, oh, how'd you get that?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like my
Do one another? No.
baby number 6, you know, he got bitten by a dog when he was 4, and so he's got this huge ragged scar that goes across his eyebrow, across his nose, and into his cheek, where the dog like literally grabbed him across the face, and he took like 29 stitches across his face. And what's funny is that, you know, now he's got these scars, and we always joke that, well, you know, chicks dig scars, don't worry about it. It's a life experience. When you'll come up with a good story for how you got that scar, not when I was 4, I got bit by a dog. How stupid is that, right? It's got to be like, well, I was down in Mexico, and this guy came at me with a knife, you know, and he got me, but I got him, but he's not around anymore. You know, something like that, right?
No, my mom had a melanoma removed on her arm,
Uh-huh.
and the holiday fair just this past weekend, well, like when she got her surgery was like a few weeks prior, so her scar was still very, very evident at the time. And so she got tired of people asking, like, what it, because people are nosy, you know, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
how'd you get that? Like, I don't even know you.
Yeah.
But, like, she was in a knife fight, you know, she stayed into a shark attack or a bear
Yeah.
attack or, so, you know, just like all this stuff, these
Yeah.
elaborate stories became like, oh my God, like what we would tell them.
That's fun to do. It really is. Yep. But yeah, so, enough. So just know that your parents are right because they're right, because they're your parents. You know, I'm lucky. Both of my parents died early in my life, so I've had to make up my own rules as I go along, right? So I don't have to worry about being in college and saying, "Oh, you were right all along." Where my son, you know, he was in college for maybe 6 weeks, and he wrote back a letter. So he wrote an actual letter. Like my son doesn't, you know, like everyone who's under the age of 30, they don't actually handwrite letters anymore. He wrote an actual letter, and the first 6 lines were, "You were right, you 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 were right." And my wife practically framed it, put that on the wall, and listen. Every time the kids started getting angry at her, she was read the letter. You were right, you were right, you were right.
That's great.
Okay. So now let's talk about the physical development. We've talked so much about the cognitive development. We'll talk a little bit about babies and what they can do. Okay. Now I'm going to refer heavily to your book because there's an awful lot of charts and graphs in your book that you need to know, okay? If you look on page 767, you'll see table 20-4, which is a summary of all the theorists we talked about. You look on 2 pages later, 769, pediatric growth and development milestones for 0 to 12. And then, and those are very important stuff to know. And then growth and development for 1 to 3 is a couple pages later. Growth and development for 3 to 6, a couple pages later. Are you getting it? You need to know those tables, okay? It's going to be very difficult for me to remember all the tables, but we're going to work through them kind of briefly. So from birth to 12 months old, you know, these are some of the things you can expect. Reflexes and neurologic development. So what are the neonatal reflexes? Moro's one. Babinski's another.
I just looked this chart the other day.
Yeah.
Crawling.
Okay, the stepping, crawling reflex, yeah. The grasper reflex, okay. Understanding that you're going to see something like, you know, you put your fingers in the baby's hands and he grasps your hands, you pull them off the bed. Is that normal? That sure is normal. You know, or a baby, you know, parents are worried because every time they make a loud noise, their baby goes, oh, like he's afraid of everything. That's a startle reflex, that's normal, okay? Now, how about sensory development in a newborn? How well can a newborn hear when they're born?
Well, they all go through, I mean, they have to go hear pretty well, because they have to
Not
go
very
through, like,
well.
hearing loss tests or whatever.
Well, sure. So you know they have pretty good hearing. Remember I talked about how the newborn how the fetus can hear me when I'm talking to him through the womb?
Yeah.
Hearing is very acute in a newborn, okay? Their sense of hearing is very well developed. It's as well developed at birth as it ever will be, okay? The same for smell. The sense of smell is very acute in a newborn. A newborn recognizes his mother's smell over everyone else's smell at birth. They can already do it. If you take mom's breast milk and put it on a pad and some other woman's breast milk and put them on either side of the baby's head, the baby will always turn to his mother's breast milk. Okay? Babies recognize their mother from the sound of their voice and the smell of their mother. Okay? It's very important. It's why we don't want women to take showers as soon as the baby's born. We want them to cuddle and love on their baby for a while and to stay away from all those perfumes and, you know, fancy flowery soaps that hide who she is. Because the baby interacts with mother through the sound of her voice and through the smell of her. Okay? Babies can't see very well at birth. The baby can only see 8 to 12 inches from his face. Okay? Out about 8 to 12 inches from his face is where he focuses, and 18 inches is as far as he can see. Anything that's more than 18 inches that he can't see, hear, or smell does not exist. Okay? He hasn't the capacity to experiencing anything more than 18 inches away from him with his vision. And it's a little bit like when you look on the horizon and you can just barely see something, that's a baby at 18 inches. So you have to get real close, and that's why we've mentioned this before, women are 8 to 12 inches from birth canal to belly button to nipple, nipple to nose, elbow to shoulder. It's not an accident you are that proportion. It's because that's what your baby can see. That's what he follows. And of course he can't see color at birth, but he can see the change from light to dark. He sees contrasting colors. Black and white, white and red, white and blue, whatever. He sees sharp contrast, which is why there's the linea nigra, which is why there's the dark nipples on pale breasts, which is why there's the dark cheeks on pale eyes, so he can see you better, okay? And that's not an accident. That's what babies can see. They develop the ability to see color at the end of the first year, but until then they can't. And their vision starts to creep away from them very early in life, so that by the time they're, I believe, is 4 months old, they can see across the room. And you'll know when your baby can see you because you put the baby in a car seat and walk away, and then like you'll get out of view, and it's really cute. You tell your parents, walk toward the baby and smile, and all of a sudden baby's eyes will light up. There she is, because mom just came into view. That's how far she can see. Okay, is how far. When you see his reaction on his face, that's when you know how far you're going to see. Now, we have to talk a little bit about object permanence. What is object permanence?
Can they get fixed on something?
No? It's when objects become permanent, okay? So, like this object, okay, my car keys.
Oh, yeah.
Where are my car keys?
Peekaboo, right?
They're in my pocket, right? That's why peekaboo is such an amazing thing. A newborn would see my car keys, ooh, noisy, shiny, mixed up kind of stuff. It disappeared. And not only did it disappear, the keys don't exist anymore. Not only do they not exist, they never existed. They have no concept of anything they can't see, hear, or smell for about the first 4 to 6 months, okay? So that's why peekaboo is such a big deal for babies. You cover up their eyes, and there's nothing there. And then they see you, oh, it's mommy again. Where'd mommy go? Mommy. And they literally are asking themselves, where did mommy go? All of a sudden, she's gone. There is no mommy, right? And then, oh, it's mommy again, right? And that's why peekaboo is such a big deal for babies. But it's also why babies won't tolerate being put down. Because when you put a baby down in the crib and you walk away, if they can't see you, hear you, or smell you, you don't exist. There is no mommy. There is no daddy. There's no one out there. I'm all alone on a desert planet going, hello out there. Where are you? And that's why babies can't tolerate being put down, because they don't have the object permanence. All of a sudden, I'm vulnerable and I'm alone and there's no one to protect me. And that's why it's very important to tell parents and to explain to parents why. The baby's not fussy. The baby's not in a bad mood. The baby doesn't hate you. The baby's not sick. He just hasn't the capacity to understand that you are there. And it's about 4 months old that they cross that barrier where they can remember what they can't see, hear, or smell. We believe for parents, for mom and dad, they remember mom and dad earlier, but we don't know exactly where. Somewhere around 4 weeks or so is when they'll start to remember mom and dad exist, but they still lose them if they're not there, okay? And so it's very important to understand. That's why pediatric development is so important. Neonatal development is so important. So you can teach your parents what's normal and what's not normal. Once parents understand what's normal and not normal, they stop being so frustrated by all the stupid little things, right? Physical development, again, we're thinking cephalocodal. So babies are focusing from the head to the bottom. So they have this ability to pick their head up very, very early. Okay, they can't pick their head up this way very well. Like if you pull, they get a little head lag. But on their tummy, they can pick their head up well and move around. And anybody who's seen a baby being born, watch them go to the breast. They grab the breast, they move around, they bob their head and do all kinds of cool stuff. And people are always amazed, wow, look how well she's holding her head up already. Because they're thinking of the baby as this mindless ball of flesh. They're not. They have survival skills. Okay. Now, well, we already talked about a lot about cognitive development. They're certainly not adding or anything this early on. Everything is based entirely on their reflexes and their senses.
Is that how someone to discover their feet and their hands?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The same process, right?
Yeah, it's early on. They're playing with what they have and what they can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, they've always had their hands and feet, right?
Well,
and
I'm
so
saying for them to recognize that,
yeah.
oh, this is my hand. This
Yeah.
is, you know, I just
well,
love
babies,
it.
everything goes to the mouth right away, right?
Mhm.
And so now we're going to talk about the older infant. Language, or no, still talking the same group. So language development. What's really fascinating is how babies learn how to speak. How do babies learn Tagalog versus Farsi versus English versus anything else? How do they learn it? By mimicking their mother and father's voice. Okay? And so they hear it and they say something back. And so I'll say, would you like a binky? And the baby will say, BB, BB. And I'll go, oh, that's right, binky. And he'll learn that BB is binky, and he'll get closer and closer and closer to binky. Okay, yes?
It was so amazing, like when I learned, like if the baby is deaf, they will not talk.
Right.
But they don't listen.
Exactly, yeah, because if they're deaf, they can't talk because they don't hear. They don't have anything to imitate, right? It's why people who learn how to speak when they're deaf speak so funny. They speak with a very kind of rough and I always think of a fuzzy sound, the way they speak. It's because they can't hear it, so they can't mimic it. They can't make the words back. But your baby, when he's going ba 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 ba, and you go, that's right, mama. He wasn't saying mama, but he's going to copy you because there he was. Because when he said a sound, mommy smiled, and he got positive reinforcement. So I'm going to say that again, and I'm going to make it as close to what she just said. Because I love the way newborns communicate with their parents, or infants communicate with their parents. What happens is, we smile at babies. We see them, the sun lights up in our face, and we're like, oh, da, 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 da. And baby goes, ooh, that's pleasant. And then so he enjoys it, and he smiles. And what do you do when your baby smiles at you? But you go, yay, he smiled at me! You get so excited, and your high voice goes up, and they love those high voices. And he sees that you responded positively to what he did. And he goes, ooh, how did that happen? So let me see. She made that smiley thing, and then it made me happy, so I smiled back. And so then she got excited. So then he goes, well, let me see if I can make her smile all by myself. And he smiles, and you go, oh, he smiled at me. So first he's learning how to receive information, then he's learning how to send information as a response, then he learns how to initiate the conversation by smiling out of nowhere, and you smile back, and he goes, aha, that's how that works. And then they start to pass information back and forth, mom and baby, and then he starts to mimic your behavior. Okay? When you play with a baby who's in the first month or two, make faces at them. They'll make faces back. It is the coolest thing ever. Okay? Because they want to make you happy. They want to make you smile. And so if you make a face, they'll repeat it. If you watch me when I'm working with babies, even with newborns, and I want them to open their mouth, I open my mouth. I tap them and go, and after a couple seconds, they'll go, and then I'll smile and tell them they're a good baby, and then they'll hold their mouth open because they respond very well to positive reinforcement. So you give them the behavior that you want them to do, and they'll return it, and then you congratulate them for it. It's very simple. But you teach parents how to, that's the beginning of language development. And the more you speak to children, the more they speak back, the better the vocabulary goes, and the faster they build their vocabulary, and the easier it is. Yes?
Is it, like, people have always said, like, if you talk to a newborn in a normal voice, not in a, like, baby voice, that they'll speak fast, like, they'll learn speech faster?
It's not so much the voice, but the words you use, okay?
Yes.
If you use, funny make-believe words for things, that's the word that it becomes to that baby, and so they'll continue with baby talk a little bit longer. They'll eventually figure it out. Just because of negative reinforcement, eventually they'll stop using those words. But there's no reason not to. Now, babies respond much better to a higher voice. They don't respond to the deep voice in an emotional, in a positive way. They'll cuddle to a deep voice on dad's chest. But even men, when they talk to babies, if you notice, you naturally go up an octave. Every time you talk to a baby, you go up an octave. Everybody does. You have to. Okay? And when you do, baby really lights up. And so it's exactly the same thing. You've tested things. You find that speaking with a higher voice gets you a better outcome, and away you go. And so babies respond better to a higher octave. They like mom's voice over dad's voice. They like that high pitch, and it makes them feel better. Okay? But yeah, I've dabbled with the idea that, like, don't speak in baby talk to babies. It's just so boring not to speak baby talk. It's so much fun to talk baby talk. Oh, that's right, you little baby. It's just fun. Have fun with it. They'll figure out how to speak English later. They'll learn to speak whatever you speak sooner or later. I've never met a 10-year-old walking around talking about, I want a baba. They know, what they're trying to say. Okay, they'll change. Discipline. It's very important. You cannot discipline a child under the age of 12 months. It just can't be done. They have no concept. And I remind people, if he doesn't recognize that mom and dad is there when he can't see you or hear you or smell you, do you really think he can play the system and game the system? No, there is no system. Okay, there is no manipulating behavior that way. He's not going to go, no, I really don't want breast milk. I want formula, so I'm going to starve myself to death until she gives me a formula. It doesn't make sense. Okay, babies just can't comprehend that far down the road. That's a level of abstract thought that newborns just can't understand. And you hear people all the time, my baby got lazy because I gave him a bottle. No, he didn't. Your baby hasn't the concept. If he doesn't remember mom exists, he doesn't remember bottles exist. And he doesn't remember that bottle would flow easier than the breast, okay? Nipple confusion is entirely mommy's confusion, not baby's confusion. The baby's not confused at all. He knows what the breasts are and nothing else, okay? But so we don't discipline babies who are under 12 months old because they don't understand it. And I hear all the time, well, you can't hold a baby too much. If you hold them too much, you'll make them spoiled. Or if you give in to them whenever they cry, you'll make them spoiled. And I'm like, they're not spoiled. All babies smell that way. They haven't the capacity to be spoiled under the age of 12 months. Now, toddlers can be spoiled, preschoolers can be spoiled. As they move through those conceptual operational phases of Piaget, they start to recognize that they can game the system, but not the newborn, not the infant, okay? And so the anticipatory guidance focuses a lot on what is normal behavior for children, okay? Then there's the toddler. So toddlers begin by focusing early on with gross motor. The toddler is the one who's learning how to walk. And I love talking about how long it takes to learn how to walk. Do you know how long it takes to learn how to walk? It's a good 5 or 6 years before you master walking, okay? Walking on 2 feet is such an incredibly difficult skill. Humans are the only mammals that have ever figured it out. It is an incredibly difficult skill to learn how to walk, all right? And it starts very early, at 4 to 6 months old. They're on their hands and knees, and they're doing that little scoot and crawling thing. And then eventually, they figure out how to pull themselves up on the furniture, and they're like this, whoa. Whoa, right? You watch a baby toddler learning how to walk, and they're doing this, and then they start to go, okay, I got this. And they get better and better at it, and then they make the big leap. Right? And then they scoot on the furniture, and soon they're getting big, they're getting good at it. And then they practice with mommy and daddy's hands. And then just one hand. And then soon, they're ready to take that big step. And they've been practicing for a whole year now. They're almost 18 months old. And they're standing. And then they fall on their butt. And everyone's like, yay! And then eventually they get better and they can learn how to walk. But they're toddlers. Right? And then, somewhere around the age of 3, they can do this. And then, but every time they try to run, they fall over. And by the time they're 4 or 5, almost 6, they can get a good run, right? That is a very lengthy process. 6 years of constant effort, all day, every day, right? And they practice it for a good 10, 20 hours every single day trying to learn how to walk. And I say, wow, that's complicated. Can you imagine saying, well, I tried to teach my baby how to walk, but he just didn't get it after a couple weeks, so I bought him a wheelchair. He didn't want to learn how to walk. Would you do that? No. Absolutely not. But do people do that with formula feeding? They sure do. I tried to teach him how to breastfeed, and he just didn't get it. We tried for like 3 weeks, and I gave up. Well, gee whiz, you give him 6 years to learn how to walk and 24 hours to learn how to breastfeed? Anyway, so understand. So back to physical development. They start with large gross motor things, and eventually they get to the fine motor things. And the favorite example of that is Cheerios. Okay? Babies love Cheerios, so they can pick them up and put them in the mouth. And they start, if you ever watch a child learn how to eat Cheerios, you put a pile of Cheerios, they do exactly that. They palm it like that. They're like... And then eventually they're just picking up one at a time and putting it in their mouth, and then one at a time and putting it in their mouth. So they go from gross motor skills to fine motor skills. Okay, getting better and better by the age of 3. The cognitive development matures remarkably in the first 3 to 5 years, and it's done through imitation, like we talked about with speech. So the language, they start with simple one or two word sentences, you know, want, need, and then it becomes I want, ball, give me ball, that kind of thing, gradually getting slightly longer. Kids who are this age are very good at mimicking symbols, so they're or signals, so they're very good at learning speech, sign language. A lot of people teach their toddler sign language. It's really fun to teach toddler sign language because you realize they can speak. They can say an awful lot more than they can work out through their mouth. Sign language is so incredibly easy. You only need an IQ of 25 or 30 to know sign language. And so these little babies can do sign language very early. William is number 5. He picked up sign language amazing, and he was very good at it with, you know, I want and more and milk, or I think this is milk. And he learned an awful lot of sign language, and it became so much a part of his interaction that even today, if he really wants something, he'll go, Dad, can I have some chocolate? And he doesn't recognize he's doing it, but this is more, you know. And so he learned that when he was a baby, whenever he did this, we would give him something. And so he learned that this became I want. And so when he really wants something, he'll put his hands together and doesn't even recognize it. And I just giggle because I see him, he's this big again. But, so they begin independent explorations. And what's really fascinating about toddlers is all the stuff that you know, you taught yourself, okay? What a step is, what a phone is, what's hot water versus cold water, what is a bird, what is a dog, what is it? You explored until you figured it out. You didn't have this innate knowledge. It had to be given to you, and you did it yourself by exploring. And so toddlers are constantly exploring, never stopping. They're moving all over the place because they're trying to figure out the world and trying to figure out everything that's in it. You can start to discipline a toddler, and they love to throw temper tantrums because, you know, what I want is the only thing that matters, right? They have no concept of rules. They don't understand what mommy and daddy are trying to say. You're just being mean, and if I throw a temper tantrum, I'm going to get my way, right? Yeah, whatever. And how do you fix temper tantrums?
Ignore it.
You ignore it, exactly. You don't punish a temper tantrum, you just walk away. Exactly. And they very quickly realize that temper tantrums are a waste of time. Okay?
My mom said that when we were at the house and we'd throw a temper, she'd throw it down right beside us.
And just do it
And
the
we'd
same
be
thing?
like- And so we'd stop and like, what are you doing, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it broke you of that habit.
Mm-hmm. How about the kids who hold their breath? You know what the recommendation is for kids who hold their breath? Let them pass out. They'll start breathing again soon. That's literally what they do. They, oh! And then they'll start breathing again. It'll be okay. They're not going to hurt themselves.
Put a pillow behind him.
That's what I needed.
Yep. And then what's interesting in, now, so if you remember, the toddler tends to have the wide gait, butt sticking out, belly comes down, and it provides a balance for them so that they can walk just like pregnant mom walks, right? And then as they get into early childhood, into preschool age, they start to thin out, and their gait straightens up, and their abs become flat, and they lose that toddler chubbiness a little bit, and they lose the waddle. So they went from this to this, right? And if you make that face, it means you need to just go make another kid. They're easy to find. It's so easy to make kids.
One thing at a time here.
Yep. And then we talked about how they're egocentric. Their language starts to develop into sentences somewhere around the age of 4, 3 to 4. They start to develop sentences.
That's hilarious, right?
Yep. And they really take a lot of value in being a big kid. You know, that, oh, what a big boy, what a big girl you are, that kind of stuff. It means a lot to be a big kid. It means a lot to be an older brother or older sister too, right? Because they're the big one. And they have a lot of magical thinking. What is magical thinking?
Things come out of nowhere.
It's that, but it's whatever I think about becomes reality. So magical thinking, you know, and it works. Usually people, when they think about magical thinking, they think of it in a negative way. I got mad at the dog and the dog got hit by a car, it's my fault. You know, that kind of thing. Magical thinking, that I made it happen.
Is that a little different from, I know my oldest son, he would have these moments where he would tell us a story about what happened at school, and parts of it would be true, and then other parts would be almost like what he wanted to happen. So
Yeah,
would that
yeah.
kind of fall into that?
It's very close, yeah, yeah. And the other part, of course, is the moral development. They'll do anything to avoid punishment, and they have no compunction against telling lies. You know, did you get that cookie? I didn't get that cookie. There's chocolate all over your face. You're covered in cookie crumbs. I didn't do it, really. I didn't do it. You know, and they're not evil. They're not evil children.
That's my husband. No.
They're always looking for your acceptance and your love and your support, and so they'll do anything to get it, even lie. And they don't recognize that lying is a bad thing because the ultimate goal is you're happy with me. That's the ultimate goal. And so I'll go ahead and tell a lie, and then you won't be happy. Then you'll be happy with me. Whereas if I tell the truth, you'll be mad at me. But this is where you can start doing timeouts and discipline. And the discipline they recommend, if it's not life and death, is to give them a timeout, just a couple of minutes on their own. And they usually talk about having like a designated timeout chair. And how long do you do timeout?
1 minute a year.
1 minute for every year, exactly. So a 4-year-old can handle 4 minutes of timeout, not an hour and a half, locked in the closet. So 4 minutes on the timeout chair. That's it.
Still.
Sitting still for 4 minutes, yeah. And but not an hour and a half locked in the closet or in the dog kennel or anything like that, right? So, so the anticipatory guidance is what you're going to tell the children, tell parents. These guys aren't evil. They're not mad. You're not trying to be devious. They're very me-focused, very egocentric,
Yes.
and they're going to be testing their boundaries, and they're going to be testing what they can get away with and not get away with.
Constant.
What's really important when you're disciplining a toddler is consistency, right? You always give the same answer, okay? That's the same response when you're disciplining undergrads. Consistency, always the same answer. The paper is due on this day. right? Test, yeah. Psychological development, or physical development. So what's interesting is boys and girls are about the same until about the age of 9, and then girls take off like a rocket. They enter puberty a little bit before boys, and they mature very quickly. Boys are a little bit slow, and so they start maturing with their puberty just a little bit later, and it takes them longer to mature. Okay, so the girls, and you see this a lot, the mismatch between boys and girls really hits them in like 5th and 6th grade. All of a sudden, all the girls are a foot taller than all the boys, you know, and they got breast buds, and the boys are like, the heck's going on? You know, all of a sudden you're different and squishy. You know, you're not the same one I was playing with last year. And so, you know, 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade, you know, the boys and girls are friends and they play pretty much the same games. Then all of a sudden, the girls go away. They get that special class, that special, what do they call it when they put all the kids together? What is it? You know, when you're in elementary school and everyone goes to the auditorium for something, they call it
Assembly.
an assembly, that's right. So the girls get this special assembly the boys aren't invited to, and then all of a sudden they grow breast buds and they'll start having periods. It's wild. And then the boys will catch up a couple of years later. So we talked about their cognitive development already. They're in the concrete operation stage. Their language development from 6 to 12 is really rapid, picking up all kinds of wonderful words. And, you know, have you guys seen...
Yeah, kinds of wonderful words.
Have you guys seen Inside Out?
Yes.
Oh, best movie about cognitive development out there. I love it. How they start with the one button that goes from happy to sad, you know, the joy and happy, and they push that one button, you know, at infancy, and then they get that small control panel where, and they've got like 5 emotions, and then puberty, and it's this gigantic control panel, and I love it when they talk about like when she bumps into the boy at the hockey ring, and it's like, it's a girl, and the guy in his head is just going crazy. That's perfect. There's actually a short called Riley's First Date. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet, but it's obviously it's just like Inside Out, but it's going into puberty. You know, it takes a first date.
But also how important each emotion was, though,
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I
it's
really
great.
think that was-
How important sadness is, and how it
Yes.
counterbalances joy. How you have to feel everything. We're not supposed to be robots who have only one emotion.
I just
Yeah,
thought that was such a
It
great.
was actually like low-key sad too.
it was a little
It
sad.
was a little sad. I was like, I did not expect to catch the feels while I'm watching Inside Out.
Oh, all Disney movies will get, or Disney and Pixar will catch it. Like, oh my gosh, Toy Story, when they're in the conveyor belt and they're about to be burned alive in the incinerator.
And they're like
Oh.
banding together. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah, exactly. They're holding hands. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and by the way, the other part is that friends become very important at that age.
Everybody's a best friend.
That's right. Everybody's your best friend forever. That's right. And I love everybody. Exactly. They start to internalize rules and start to look for, and they really gain approval. They start to understand consequences, and they don't mind arguing. And what's important is to, at this age for parents, is to avoid rescuing behavior. Okay? Rescuing behavior is, he forgot his belt, so I'm going to run and take him his belt.
Yeah.
And so there's no negative response to him forgetting his belt. Or he forgets his lunch, I'm going to run and take him his lunch. That's rescuing behavior. Or exactly. So you got to teach him that there are repercussions to your actions, that you need to start to follow the rules and make it happen. So, you know, like my son, I'm very good at avoiding rescue behavior. I'm like, I don't care. Go ahead. He got detention. Okay. That's him.
That's on you.
He falls asleep in class. Your fault, buddy. You didn't go to bed until 10 o'clock at night. But, so I've never been the kind that really rescues my children, the poor guys. They get punished an awful lot. I try to tell them, and they'll learn that Dad is right. You know what my son did last week? He got in trouble because he needs to wear a belt as part of his uniform. Okay? If your pants have belt loops, you need a belt in it. So he went to school without a belt. Guess what he did to his pants?
Tore the belt loops off.
He cut the belt loops off.
That's smart.
Innovative, yeah. Now, you know, he owes me $20 because he ruined a pair of pants. I was like, you can't wear it. What do you mean I can't wear it? It still looks fine. It doesn't have a belt. No belt, no pants. You always put a belt on with pants. What's that? Pine Forest Middle School.
What grade is he in?
7?
Oh my god! What grade is he? My mom teaches there as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's in 7th grade. Is she Mrs. Thorne? I'll have to ask him.
She's a 6th grade teacher though.
Oh, well, he may have got her last year. He was there.
What's his name?
He's William.
I mean, I don't know his name, I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, you know all your mom's school kids?
I don't memorize my mom's roster, sorry.
So 12 to 19, we enter adolescence. Very interesting. I was talking about that pediatric development course or book that I'm listening to. He was talking about the history of pediatrics and how, you know, during the industrial age, there was no interest in children. And he was telling stories like from I think it was Ireland from 1750 to 1760, like 21,000 children were born in Dublin. 700 were given their mother's breast milk and survived, and the other, 19,000 died.
Right.
In that 10-year period, it was ridiculous. How the number of children sent to foundling homes was half of all the infants born in 1760 in Ireland. It was crazy, crazy high numbers, where there's just no interest in children at all. And then when they had interest, they were like to put them to work in the mines, because 4-year-olds could crawl into tight little spaces. And like if they got distracted, you could grab them by the ears and pound their head against the wall, and that would teach them to pay attention. It's interesting at what parenting used to be. Okay, and that brings it up because in those days adolescence didn't exist. There was no such thing as adolescence. They had a very short childhood to about the age of 8, and then they became grown-ups. And but now we recognize this thing called adolescence. And the physical development, the major milestone is puberty, which we've already talked about. We talked about going through Tanner stages 1 through 5, right? Cognitive development, where they get in their deductive reasoning, problem solving, morality, social justice. Anybody who's ever raised a teenager knows everything that's on here, like, oh yeah, I got it, okay? Language development, learning to use words that mom and dad don't use. It's when they start to pick up words from outside.
YOLO.
Oh, yeah. YOLO, yeah. That's stuff. Oh, it drives my wife crazy.
Jelly.
And I'm like, what, you guys didn't have any phrases like that? Yeah, but we never said them in front of our parents. Well, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I tried once or twice. My dad would shoot me down too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then psychosocial development is when they start to form relationships and get outside the family and love interests, and the teenagers get their first broken heart and that sort of stuff.
Oh.
And and my because I'm a kind of an easygoing guy, I'm always like, I don't want to hear about your broken heart. There's 1,000 other boys in the school. Just go pick one. If that one breaks your heart, just go grab that one. You can have any of them you want. Just go randomly pick one out of a lineup. I like you. Okay, let's go. That's fine.
I mean, that age is typically how it works. So.
Yeah, seriously, it's middle school.
Yes, but I mean, if you're in even in high school, right up until men kind of pass into puberty, they're not very selective on the girls that they date. Anyone who shows them interest, they'll go for it, right? So girls have all the power. I don't know why they don't recognize it. Even today, you have all the power. If you spend some time flirting with some guy out there, you'd probably get him. Wouldn't be that hard. Guys are used to rejection. Girls don't have to worry about it. I know you don't believe it, but I'm a guy. I know. And then, yeah, we already talked about all this stuff. Moral development, discipline.
Yeah, discipline a teenager.
I'm not it's hard, right? You can't discipline a teenager. All you can do is take away their privileges, and because you give them everything. And so whatever you want to take away, you take away. The trick is that they have to want it, and like number 2, he could care less about anything. I would take something away and he go, whatever, I don't need it. I'm taking away your phone. Fine, I don't talk on it very much anyway. I'm taking away whatever, it doesn't matter. He's been that way his whole life. But number 4, boy, I tell you take his phone away, he freaks out. He needs that phone. But that's the best way I think to discipline teenagers, is just taking away privileges. But they're getting, what's really fun about teenagers is they're starting to get to the age where you can explain things to them and get them to understand why it's important. And then the need for discipline goes away as they leave adolescence. It's wonderful stuff. They just do the right thing. And then they don't do the right thing, they get punished because they get bad grades in school. And then you're not the one who's punishing them anymore. Yep. All right, and that's it. I figured I would take an entire 4 hours to do that one chapter.
So we're ready to start.
Say again?
We're ready to